Welcome to DU Digimon.
Hello and welcome to DU Digimon, and welcome finally after a 6-month hiatus back to Jank Tank. Jank Tank 10, specifically our 10th one of these tournaments. I was so excited to do this tournament. We have already done this. I'm doing this video after we have done this tournament, so do not worry. No spoilers for the results of the tournament. But as we have not done one of these in a while, let's go over our housekeeping. So first of all, the rules of Jank Tank. You are not allowed to use any decks beyond the Rogue tier and Jank tier of the tier list that we do our community voting polls on. Almost 300 people voted on the last one, which is insanity. So, you know, really grateful for that, and for the really diverse pool of decks that we've ended up kind of having. I'll flash up on screen, you know, what the Rogue tier and the Jank tier are currently looking like. A lot of things were quite surprising to end up in there. Stuff like Fenrir ended up in Jank tier, which is nuts. Possibly because of the fact that I used an old image, but, you know, never here or there. We'll see what happens on the next tier list vote. You know, other stuff on there. You know, Rapidmon made its way into Rogue tier. Boltmon ended up in Jank tier. You know, just a couple of ones off, you know, off of memory that are now in those lower tiers. But anything beyond those tiers, you cannot use at all, because they're considered too good. Speaking of being considered too good, we do also have the meta engine rules. This is our second rule, and it was something that we didn't have for a little while, and then we ended up bringing back because someone, not naming names, abused the fact that it wasn't there anymore. Which is bad of me as a person who created this tournament. But basically, the meta engine rule is basically a rule in place that is essentially you can't just put a bad top end on top of a good deck. So say, for example, you wanted to use the adventure engine for a Rapidmon build or a green gacha build. Nope, you can't do that. If you wanted to use red hybrid or purple hybrid for something, nope, can't do that. All that kind of thing. So none of that, you know, being shoehorned in. And then the third rule is that we do have 4 specifically banned cards from the format, and these are EX5 Shine Greymon Ruin Mode, BT12 Quartzmon, BT9 Death Xmon, and EX8 Medieval Gammamon. All 4 of those cards are completely banned from the format, and we have thought about potentially bringing in some other cards to ban as well, but we haven't properly discussed it yet. Though I could possibly name a couple. Looking at you, Omnimon Ourorous. But those are the rules of Jank Tank. So basically, only the things in Rogue tier and Jank tier. No using meta engines on the sly, and making sure that you're not only adhering to the normal Bandai ban list, but the ban list that we specifically have for Jank Tank. So, you know, for example, if any of you guys ever do decide to come on down to Dead Universe Comics, Jank Tank is not an official event that the shop does. It's something that we, you know, actually go our way to do ourselves. But if you ever did come down, you must adhere to those rules. Anyways, let's go on to the decks that will be participating in this tournament. And like I said, no spoilers for how they did, because usually I like to do this video before the tournament. I couldn't know because of the very quick turnaround we had after the tier list vote, because we had 2 days between Jank Tank 10 and the end of that vote. So yeah, apologies there. I'm doing it kind of in post. But our first list is Bunnies. This is Charles's list. Bunnies ended up playable in Jank Tank, and this time it wasn't a case of, oh, Bunnies is just being used by someone who, you know, doesn't have any other deck. We've had that before a couple of Jank Tanks ago, where we allowed it because it was basically just a structure deck. This is not, though. This is full on Rapidmon X using random stuff from BT16, BT19, BT8 stuff. Bunnies, and safe to say this was one of what I was surprised at, because Bunnies is really quick. Because as a deck, it's really interesting because they just don't do things normal at all. Like, you know, you can go into one of your Rapidmons, and then your Rapidmons, whether it be the level 4 one or the level 5 one, count as Digivolutions for your Rapidmon X, which is level 6, and your Mega Gargomon, which is level 6. Both of those can just Digivolve on top of them, which is kind of crazy to think about. You can just skip evolutions essentially. You've also got a lot of cool little tech cards in here, like Fire Rocket, which works with your armor forms and your 2 colors. You know, so you can give your Rapidmon X, which is an armor form, security tap +1. You can use it first with one of your Rapidmons for 1 cost to give you security tap +1 to it, and then go up to make a Gargomon, you know, retaining that security tap +1, and then being able to swing in for like 4 checks, potentially even more than that if you've got Alliance from the Lopmon. Yeah, Bunnies was kind of mental for coming into the low enough tiers, which you know, it really shows the power creep, I suppose, and especially seeing that we've not done one of these in a while, because I think Bunnies was squarely like tier 2 last time we did one of these back in February. But yeah, crazy deck list, and Bunnies is definitely one to beat. Next list is, and I am going to butcher the name of it as I did in the tier list video, I think it's Uranusmon, basically the second Appmon deck, which by the way, we're getting like more of that in BT23 as well. We're just getting Appmon stuff every set at this point, getting a bit of Appmon fatigue, frankly, and I don't even play the deck. You know, but Uranusmon is interesting, and the other thing that's interesting about this list as well is actually this is a borrowed list. Chris is borrowing this list from Dane, who also plays the deck, and it's funny because we also have another deck which is borrowed in this tournament as well. But Uranusmon is very interesting. It's not as like immovable as the original Appmon. It's not as aggro, I would say, as the original Appmon. It can go wider potentially, and it has a lot of kind of more unique tricks, a little bit more access to Digivolve and Scapegoat and all this sort of stuff. Of course, it does have some of the original Appmon's kind of stuff, like the Swipemon egg, the Navimon, the Harrow, of course, and also the Applink option. But it's just kind of like a more like variety driven version, I guess, is kind of how I would describe it in my head, compared to the original Appmon deck. It's very interesting, very intriguing, and again, quite a unique pick, and also quite a spooky one if it gets going. Next list is gonna be, it's kind of BloomLord, but it's kind of also just like Dan's green good stuff. You know, and green good stuff is technically, if we're being really technical with some of the stuff recently in some metas, I think green good stuff technically is still meta, but BloomLord itself made its way low enough, so we allowed it. It's absolutely fine. But this is kind of a mix between BloomLord. It's like 70%, 80% BloomLord stuff, and then the rest of it, and then probably more than that actually, 90% BloomLord stuff, and then some of it is kind of green good stuff, you know. So we've got our normal kind of plant related things, all of our Palmons, for example. The combo between the BT14 and the X antibody, of course, is really cool, being able to give them when this Digimon suspends, gain 2 memory, and you just immediately suspend them with Palmon X. You've got the Togemon stuff, playing out tamers and suspending stuff. You've got access to Digiburst, like with the Argomon. I'd almost be surprised if well, actually, if I am surprised that he's not put Blossomon in as well. He does have the Adventure Lilymon, which that's not an engine. Just a single adventure card is fine. It's not constituting an engine, but Lilymon is one of the strongest level 5s that Adventure has access to, and just in general Green has access to. You know, granted, in this list, it's not really going to be popping off. It's not going to it's going to suspend all the 5Ks or less, but it's not going to bottom deck anything because all of your tamers are the same color. But the Alliance is really cool because of how wide this deck can go. BloomLord, of course, in of itself is amazing. You know, the kind of was definitely a gatekeeper deck and a gatekeeper Digimon, doing lots of checks and just beating over things. You got the Savagamon Ace and the Puppetmon Aces for a little bit of removal and just kind of slapping them down. Of course, it's got HPD, which of course also Charles had access to because it's green list. Yeah, so scary. BloomLord was a absolute gatekeeper for a while, but it ended up getting into rogue tier, which is kind of nuts. And speaking on that as well, obviously we are playing a few different rogue tier decks. We are looking at the end of this year to go back to going just jank tier decks, now that the jank tier and everything is kind of diversifying a bit more and there's a bit more in the pool. Right, on to the next list. This is Dane's list. This is Gammamon. Again, scary list. This has a lot of protection. He's able to make use of certain cards like the one of Aurorous Superior mode, which is just a pseudo boss monster. It's got the Crimson mode for just clearing boards. Siriusmon, the BT21 Siriusmon, I think is one of the best level 6s from that set, and I'm not even kidding with that. The fact that it's got Security Attack +1, Raid, has access to Piercing now with the new Wezen Gammamon, the BT22 one. You know, so it can actually comfortably raid into stuff. But also on top of that, it clears 2 bodies. So it's going to be, when digivolving, you tuck something underneath it, deletes the lowest DP. Then, when attacking, does that again, deletes the lowest DP. Raid off into their highest DP, and you will be bigger than them because, oh my god, you've got so many 2000 DP inheritables in this deck. You know, and yeah, it's just a really bonkers card, a really, you know, scary list. The fact that it's got that these generic kind of protection effects as well, you know, or rather just like. Not generic necessarily. They're obviously they're Gammamon specific protection effects, but they're all encompassing. You know, the only thing that is going to stop this is like DP reduction and de-digivolve. Everything else it could be pretty much fine. It's got Crimson Blaze as well. Great card. Yeah, really cool list, and you know, nice to see a protagonist deck which isn't entirely broken, but is kind of still possibly say, in my opinion, too strong for Jank Tank, but it got voted into Rogue Tier, so we allow it. Next is Dan with D-Linkz. This is the same deck he brings to every Jank Tank, and you know, we've discussed it. In essence, he is the moral winner because D-Linkz has never won, so therefore it has to be one of the janky lists. But saying that, you know, good kind of friend of the channel, good old Bone Duster, you know, has proved that D-Linkz can be really good. You know, I'll always name drop Bone Duster because A, cool ass name, B, cool ass guy. You know, and you know, D-Linkz can do really well. Obviously, this is not the same as what Bone Duster had, because obviously we can't have Medieval Gammamon in this format. But D-Linkz is still very floodgatey. You know, if you can't play around those floodgates, it can put you in a real big amount of trouble. It's got some really efficient lines in there, especially with the promo Hina, just allowing you to digivolve up your level 4s really easily, level 4s and higher, sorry. Yeah, he's still got this Ragnarlord in here, which I swear I have never ever seen Dan pull off this bloody Ragnarlord, but he assures me that it's in there for a good reason, and I somewhat trust him. So let's go on to the next list, which is technically Jake, but actually mine. He's borrowing this one from me. He didn't have a Jank Tier or Rogue Tier deck at the ready, so I let him borrow Couttormon. He played Sakuryamon, so that's the first deck he built, was Sakuryamon, and I thought, I've got a yellow deck, here you go. Is it kind of a difficult deck to give to someone who has never played the deck and is then going straight into a tournament? Yeah, because there's a lot to kind of micromanage. You've got to make sure your security's low enough, but not too low. And you're going to make sure you're going as aggro as possible and making sure you've got your security minus effects to stop you from being killed. But I friggin' love Kentauros, and actually it was one of the decks I was potentially going to bring with me, but I decided on something else, which we'll get into in a minute. But some other really good kind of strategies in this. You've got the Alliance from the engine. We've got a very small adventure engine, but it's not the adventure engine that is used in terms of the meta, so it's fine, you know. And it is literally just 2 cards. It's not like it's, you know, all the things. I'm not breaking any rules, and neither is Jake. You know, you've got the Gammamon stuff to gain memory, and we've got, you know, lots of ways of kind of playing things out from security or having security effects. The Gammamon and the Rapidmon both play out from security. Gammamon has a security effect to play itself out. The Gammamon and Rapidmon BC15 and the Rapidmon obviously specifically need to be trashed to play out, so we can do stuff with that. Trash the Chiramon from security. The Chiramon also lets us go really cheaply up into Kentauros and Mitamamon. I frigging love this deck. I love this deck so much. And you know, was really interested to see how it would do in the tournament. Right, so next one is again my list, but this is the list I actually played, which is Boltmon. And as you can see from the profile we did back at the start, BT22, quite a few changes. I've got a bit more CS oriented. You know, so we've got the Mirai, for example. We could trash one of our CS cards from our hand, helping us fill up for Boltmon later to draw 2. We've got the Yugo, searching our CS card specifically, and also, really interesting, lets us go into Boltmon for even cheaper. So Boltmon with the assembly will minus its play cost by 6. Yugo, when a CS card would be played, further reduces it by 2 by bottom decking it. So that means you can play out Boltmon for 4, potentially even more if you've got all 3 Yugos, because they do actually stack, which is interesting. You know, because they are essentially all triggering at the same point. When something would be played, so you can just bottom deck, bottom deck, bottom deck, bottom deck, all of them go. But the Boltmon is great. I really liked this list, and it's really fun. It just feels so much better than the profile that I originally did. You know, which happens a lot. You know, I'll put out a profile because I want to try and, you know, put something out there, and you know, it won't always be perfect. And trust me, people let me know that. But later on, I always tweak things and change things, and I like this list way more. I did also put the Uranusmon in, thanks to the recommendation from people. I was avoiding it because I don't typically like to have one-offs, but it is busted because you know, we can just play out Boltmon from our trash completely for free because we're reducing it by 6, and then Boltmon uses its assembly to reduce it by a further 6, which is nuts. We've got lots of trashing potential, lots of draw. I really liked this list, and you know, it really feels cohesive now. It didn't originally, and now it does. I absolutely love it. Then we've got the Source Strip deck, which is Sam's Vikemon list. So Vikemon is a tricky customer to go up against, especially for those kind of single stack decks that like to have lots of different inheritables, because Vikemon just sees them and eats them for breakfast. You know, so I really like this list. Obviously, blue anything has certain tricks and certain kind of things that are always great for it. You know, source stripping. You know, you've got well, bottom decking and stuff like that. You don't really have like jamming or anything in this, but you know, is what it is. But yeah, this is a really cool source strip list, and Sam has been cooking on Vikemon for such a long time. You know, it's always going to be an interesting list to go with. And really funny, completely unrelated to how the deck performs, I just really like how the two Vikemons are next to each other, and then they're kind of coming towards me in the same direction but from different angles. That's really cool. I don't know why that's cool for me. A little bit of a what's it called, tangent, but you know, whatever. And then that's our last list. So yeah, those are our 8 lists that participated in Jank Tank 10. Obviously, we could not showcase all of them. We are a very small team. I have one camera. I can't really use my phone to film stuff because I need to keep it on hand in case my wife and my daughter need me. You know, so you know, one day when the channel is massive, then we might be able to film all of them all together. But until that day, we just settle for the 3 matches that we can film, you know, and we try and film as many of the decks as we can. You know, and if the numbers get bigger for a tournament, we can always film more of those decks because, you know, we'll have more rounds. But you know, I hope you guys really like this Jank Tank 10. Jank Tank is a lot of work to do. Obviously, there's organising it, there's filming the matches, there's editing them, there's putting together the deck list videos, there's the tier list community ones. All of those things culminate into a Jank Tank. So I would really appreciate it, and the team would really appreciate it, if you could like this video, subscribe to the channel, ding that notification bell, and just help us push Jank Tank a little bit higher up into the algorithm. Jank Tank hasn't really done that well and isn't always worth it in terms of views. Obviously, we don't do it for views. It just helps, you know, in a lot of regards. So, you know, it'd be really nice to see Jank Tank kind of, you know, shift up a bit in terms of the viewership on the channel, just to kind of give it a little bit more, you know, punch. Obviously, it doesn't help we've not done one in ages, but that was absolutely no one's fault. We had so many illnesses, so many people just away, and you know, stuff like that. So yeah, Jank Tank's kind of had a bit of a rough time of it this year, but we're trying to do as many of them before we close off the year, and we'll be doing another one in a couple of weeks from when I'm filming now. So we'll be doing actually the next one on September the 17th. So that is a Wednesday. Anyone who would like to participate in that, please do contact me on Discord, you know, and send across lists and stuff like that. Obviously, we'll try and get lists before the tournament, and obviously just make sure you're adhering to the rules that we set, you know, at the beginning of this video, and of course, you know, just kind of send across the deck lists and make sure you're just using a deck that's within those road tier and jank tiers, if you would like to participate. But like I said, that is all of everything from me. I hope you guys enjoy it. Like, subscribe, ding that notification bell, and we'll see you for our first match, which is tomorrow, which is Boltmon versus D-Linkz. But until then, keep it digital.